welcome to the second episode of Straight Talk, where we work to separate facts from noise and know what actions to take for better results. Today, we want to illuminate the truth about mental health and the challenges facing our youth in hopes that we can help others identify and realize new opportunities. Blueback Health helps employers design, implement, and manage robust and affordable employee benefit and wellness programs. And today, we're pleased to welcome Stacey Walker of New Canaan Cares, which New Canaan Cares is an independent nonprofit community organization in New Canaan, Connecticut, whose purpose is to advance the health and well-being of youth and families. They provide responsive educational programs that support and strengthen parenting skills, positive youth development, and healthy lifestyles, all free of charge. So with the question that we're constantly asking is, are we spending too much time talking and more doing? So I'm going to throw that right to Stacey. Welcome, Stacey. Thanks for joining.
Thank you, Eric. I'm happy to be here today to have this discussion with you. Thank you for having me.
So, Stacey, your organization's really pretty amazing with some of the things that you do. But then also I look back at your, where you came from. Tell me a little bit about you. I see you went to school in Vermont and New York and then actually taught first grade in New York City.
I did. So yes, you are correct. I started out my career in education first in New York City. And I quickly learned that educating children was just as important as educating parents as well. And all of the mental health tied into everything within a family. So when I started teaching in New York City, as the year went on, I started to implement some parent and children programs to help educate the family unit as a whole. So we could work together for a common goal. And then after that, I went on to Colorado, where I taught there as well. And then I moved to New Canaan, and I did some teaching in New Canaan. And then this is my 5th year at New Canaan Cares, where I currently serve as the education and program coordinator. So my job is to educate the community and create programs for our youth and our parents to strengthen parenting, strengthen, any skills that children might need. And something we also do here at New Canaan Cares that not everyone is aware of, we are also our town's local prevention council, otherwise known as the LPC, which means we are responsible for educating our community on substance use and misuse and implementing prevention strategies focused primarily on youth. So we do a whole lot here at New Canaan Cares, and we're really proud to serve our community. And we also serve beyond our community. As you mentioned, all of our programs are free of charge. And we partner with many different organizations to incorporate other communities and towns into our programs.
That's great. Maybe if we kind of go back in, kind of the age spectrum, and we look at, you started out teaching first grade in, inner city New York. And so when you look at those themes, the elementary school kids and their parents, and obviously different demographic geographies that you've worked in, socioeconomic, what do you see as themes? When you look at those development years and the average parent, we've all said, like these little bundles of joy don't come with instruction manuals.
They do not. And I am actually a parent of 3 teenagers myself, so I can tell from firsthand experience, tell you all, they do not. I think, what's interesting is that regardless of what our backgrounds are or where we come from, kids are kids and they experience similar problems, just at different levels. And I think, as they are young and they are malleable, it is our job as parents and educators to help create human beings who can grow to be independent, self-regulators, and can thrive. And it's our job and our responsibility to help provide that for them. And also something that's really important is creating boundaries for them, because within those boundaries, that's when they feel safe and they can explore and they can then grow and understand where their boundaries are and how they are to grow and exist in, as in our world.
Mm-hmm. So then when you look at, in your youth programs, your Kid Power program, which is targeting like 3rd and 4th graders, the 4 things that you have there are they're working on, and I know that's not just this, but, working on self-confidence, problem solving, communication, and team building. So those are obviously very big topics, but you start with self-confidence. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I think, for all kids, no matter what age, self-confidence is very important. And in order to build that, you have to start at the ground level with the younger kids, and you have to teach them what it means, what it looks like to be confident. And everyone is confident in different ways and can show it in different ways. And when you start teaching and working with these kids and showing them hands-on experiences and making them feel proud and taking ownership of what they're doing, and then expressing it or sharing it with the group, or we have our high school leaderships mentoring our younger kids as well, and they're working together and they see the reactions on the high school leadership students' faces or our faces, and they just feel proud and they're like, okay, this makes me feel good. And that, in essence, is fostering their self-confidence and hoping to give them that feeling that I can do this and I can continue to do this. And hopefully they can pay it forward, right?
Right.
Also continue to help educate their peers. One of the things we find very important is peer-to-peer education. When you learn from your peers, right, you learn the best. As teachers, we can teach our kids, obviously learn from them, but when you're looking at your peer or, an older peer, it's just a different type of education.
Yeah. So let me kind of crosswalk this over. So when you look at these formative years, teamwork, problem solving, building self-confidence, and then we look at youth sports, right? So with youth sports, there's the everyone gets a trophy, which some look at negatively, whereas others say, hey, look, I'm part of something. Let's celebrate it, have some fun. And then when you look at what happens on the playing court fields and coaches, especially early on in development years, that are a little bit over the top, what coaching and guidance do you give parents when you look at this, everyone gets a trophy, and how parents behave inappropriately in youth sports?
Wow, that's a loaded question.
Isn't
there,
it, huh?
Well, I mean, I think for, every family, right? Every family has their own values and things that are important to them and how they are raising their children, right? So the way I raise my children and the way I may view youth sports, or everyone gets a trophy, or only the winning team needs a trophy. That's how I'm teaching my children. And my children, my hope is they will take that and bring that onto their youth sports experience, right? So they're growing within themselves. Yes, you may have, parents who are teaching their children something different, which is perfectly okay, because that's how they're teaching their kids and that's what they think is, important to them. What I would say, when you take a step back and look at the big picture, I think when you look at our kids today, they're very overscheduled. And the one thing we do know is play is super important for kids to learn, to grow, and to problem solve. But in our hyper-competitive world, it's hard as a parent not to get involved with all the extracurricular and the sports and load up our children. So I would say, if as parents, you could give your children the opportunity to play and watch them problem solve themselves, those are going to help them and give them the skills to grow that they need and to learn to tackle those problems that they see in youth sports going forward. I think for us, one of the most important things is, letting our kids experience things for themselves. And as hard as it is to watch your children fail or experience sadness or hardships, that helps develop them and build up their confidence and make them feel stronger, to feel like, okay, maybe this didn't go well, but I'm still okay. I'm here. I'm still successful. And I could use this towards the next obstacle I may encounter.
That was great. I think, what we're also observing, and you touched on this earlier, we've got kind of that crosswalk of what parents can help support and deliver, but at the same time, there are definitely needs for, trained mental health providers, and the earlier we can identify that and find those resources for our children, the better. So maybe talk a little bit about that with some of what you guys are doing, and maybe support guidance education you're giving to parents to understand the resources available on a professional side.
Well, I think for us at CARES, we do have on our website a whole section on resources. So when we talk to parents, they can go to our resource page, or we always reach out to our mental health professionals in the community if we have parents come to us with specific questions, or maybe the schools or another nonprofit. We work together to get information out there. So I think in terms of guidance for us, what we would always say is, reach out to a mental health professional, or reach out to a pediatrician, or reach out to your primary care doctor. They're going to be your source for all that information, that information that you can obtain, and they're going to point you in the right direction. We can help you with resources from our side, but in terms of mental health for the kids, if they're in need of it, that's where I would direct them.
Right. Yeah, and I think one thing that's happened on our side, when we look at working with employers and developing their, benefit programs, which includes health insurance and, generally mental health resources, the first question a lot of parents ask is, how am I going to pay for this? Does my insurance cover it? And I think while it's been there for, a number of years, the telemedicine feature really has expanded greatly because of the pandemic, and it's much more widely accepted, so that now to scale, we do have limited mental health professionals here in Connecticut and abroad. There's a shortage, and now that we have people better embracing and enhanced programming on telemedicine, it gives them a lot easier of an access to these mental health providers. And so I agree. I mean, at the end of the day, the sooner parents can understand more about their child and what the child's needs are, and the schools do a great job of supporting it, community resources to identify, what's really going on with my child, or what am I not seeing because I'm not the trained professional, and then to set them up for success. We are definitely not clinicians, but we interpret the benefit programs. We lean on the resources available at the insurance carriers to say, hey, look, take advantage of that mental health benefit, i.e. telemedicine or in person. And then, with that, set that child up for success, because it doesn't go away after 3 sessions, right?
Well, and I think what you're saying is just incredible, that you're providing them with these resources. And I think something to note is that we as parents have a gut feeling, right? Mm-hmm. There is that gut feeling. And if you have that feeling as a parent, you go with it and you get the help that you need for your child. But I also think what's important is educating the parents and letting them know, if you need help, reach out for help, right? Because part of it is the parents understanding. And if they're struggling, they need to help themselves as well in order to be able to help their children. And sometimes that means that's a whole family process where they go into therapy together. And I think the continual talking about it and offering these services is really important, because the more we talk about it, the more people are aware of it and the more change we can make. And I think, obviously you're right, there is a shortage to, mental health. We had its challenges prior to the pandemic, and now we're seeing it more and more. So we need to reach out and we need to help any way we can.
Are kids talking about it more? Are they more open?
Well, what's interesting is that I will tell you, kids talk about it more than parents, right? So kids are talking about it. They want to talk about it. They keep talking about it. We have kids that reach out to us and say, how can we help you? I mean, we've heard kids that want to start mental health programs. They want to talk about it. They want to pay it forward. They want other teenagers to know, okay, this is okay. We're all experiencing it. Let's talk about it. And so I think that we're hopefully maybe starting a movement that kids, they're the ones that could be the driving force behind this, because they're experiencing it and they want to talk about it. That's what we know. And so if they can talk about it, we as adults and everyone else can talk about it and need to continue to talk about it. There's no shame in it. I think that's the biggest thing that, we worry about as parents, like, oh my goodness, but what if my child is this or that or what? Oh, you know what? There's no shame. We're all in this together and we just have to address it.
Yeah. Well, and I think I agree with you. And that's what I think is powerful when we look at what children are saying, children, young adults again, and they're the ones that are, being a little bit more real at times than parents are. And, and so that's, and when we have conversations, with, younger adults, whether it's through, scouting or community or, charitable events. Boy, it's impressive. Like a lot of these kids, they know what's going on. They're talking about it. It's different than when you and I were younger, but so now getting back to kind of what, you guys are doing, what are you finding some of the, most enjoyable programs that you have that you're personally and your team getting out of it as it relates to whether it's aha moments or progress or someone taking some initiative? Is there anything, there's always kind of that, wow, that was awesome and we didn't see it coming.
Yes, I can't just pick one. So
yeah, don't.
with me. Well, I think for me, what's incredible is that, as I mentioned, I've been here, this is my 5th year. And so I have seen kids that have been in our Kid Power program and now 5 years later, and I run into them and they're, that much taller, that much bigger, that much wiser. And they share, oh, Mrs. Walker, remember when I did Kid Power? And they'll share an experience of what helped shape them. Or maybe they had an incident and something they learned in Kid Power helped them to handle that. So for me, that is really rewarding. And then another thing is, as I mentioned, our leadership program, part of that component, that's for our high schoolers, they work and they mentor the younger children. And so when you see that dynamic of the high school students working with the younger children, that is amazing to watch. Because it's incredible. They're both giving and they're both taking and they're both learning and they're both growing from each other, right? It's not just the older kids teaching the younger kids. I think those younger kids are teaching the older kids as well, which is really, incredible to watch that dynamic. And I think, one last thing I think for us that we're fortunate enough is we work closely with schools, other nonprofits, our town, our police officers, stores. So we really get to work together to grow our community and, expand our reach and be able to talk to people within the community to help provide what we need. We may have someone reach out and say, oh, I have a group of young girls, they're really struggling with this. Can you put a group together for them? Absolutely. We may have a group of high schoolers that say that. So we can really use that and then create these groups to help these kids. So I just think our aha moments are just watching them grow and develop. Mm-hmm. And even a parent, if you see a parent passing the town that says, oh, this program I went to really helped me and helped me with my children. You just look around and you think, okay, we're getting through to these parents and these kids. We have a lot of parents that we meet when their children are preschoolers and they stay with us through high school and even college.
Right.
And they, continue to listen to our programs. So I think it's just that, like hearing a parent or a child just, tell you something that really touched them or meant something to them and how it helped them really secures those aha moments. They're just too many, Eric.
Yeah. Well, but I get what you're saying. Our children are 20 and 23. Our daughter just finished her master's, and our son's in his junior year. And they're independent thinkers, and some of that is because, and it's not going on about our parenting, but I think by nature, my wife and I are, inquisitive, and at the same time, we wanted them to have leadership skills and think on their own. And so I always use this phrase, like we just kept putting our kids in front of the bus and seeing, can they stop the bus? Do they need to get out of the way of the bus, or are they going to get hit? And but I think when you look at, you guys have in your middle school program, you have public speaking, you have decision making. So talk to me a little bit about, now we're in middle school and we're talking about public speaking.
Well, so it's interesting that you say that, because at the end of the session of middle school leadership, we always ask the kids, what did you like? What would you change? And what would you keep the same? And something they always say is more public speaking, more public speaking. And what's interesting, I had a parent come to me just last week that said, my son came home and said, he absolutely loved it. And this is coming from a child who doesn't really speak that often. And she was completely surprised that he loved the public speaking. And I think kids crave that, and they want to get up and they want to present and they want to feel comfortable, but they just don't know how to do that yet. So we are providing them those tools, and it's, interesting to watch their dynamics, their hand gestures, just how they talk, and helping to guide them in the role of public speaking. And also, having them understand that, being a leader, you can also be a quiet leader. I think so often kids think, oh, you have to be loud and boisterous and everyone has to listen to me, but there are quiet ways to lead as well. And you can also do that through public speaking. So that's great to see with these kids that they're really enjoying this. And I think, truth be told, with the pandemic, it's been hard to read emotions and read the room, right? In the crowd,
Right.
wearing masks. How am I doing? How am I doing? And it's just a lifelong skill that we're providing them that they can use now during the pandemic with masks and then moving forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I think the more that, our youth are able to do that, the better, have those platforms. And there's obviously a ton of different, organizations out there, both through their schools, also in the community. So now if we get into high school, and we, with the age of your children and definitely ours, when we look at their time management, right? And so we talked about earlier where kids are somewhat overloaded, right, wrong, or indifferent. We're not, I'm not here today to criticize that, but boy, some of these kids are, they don't get to have as much interpersonal relationship with their classmates because they're off to something else, and it's nonstop. So what are you seeing in time management? What are your observations, and what are you guys doing to help support high schoolers?
Well, I think, you are correct. There's a lot going on, especially for these high schoolers with schoolwork, extracurricular, family, volunteer work. They do take on a lot. And I think something that, we tell our parents and we try to instill in our kids or teenagers as well, making little changes can help. And sometimes that means taking a little me time, right? Not easy, because as we know, how do we find that time? Because I'm doing my homework and I have all my AP classes, and then I have to go to my sports, and then I have my volunteer or whatever I may have. But it's finding something in your life that brings you joy or happiness, that even if you can do it for 5 minutes, sometimes it's practicing mindfulness, it's breathing. Sometimes it's just laughing. Sometimes it's just listening to a podcast, something for these kids to do to give themselves that time, albeit 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, to decompress so they can regroup and remanage. Because we all know that when you're stressed and you constantly work, nothing is being absorbed, right? At some point, everything shuts down. So if you can help yourself and have that self-regulation, something a wonderful doctor we work with at Silver Hill Hospital said to me, because I can't take credit for it. He said, when we say no to our children, we are helping to help them say no to themselves and self-regulate, right? Mm-hmm. So you're realizing where your limits are. So when you're in high school, it's realizing within yourself, okay, I've hit my limit. I need to walk away, and then I can come back, restructure, maybe change a little bit of my management style. And I think sometimes it's just trial and error, but I think taking time to breathe and pause for these kids really is important for them.
So now when you look at that, whether it's, a lot of pressure because parents are pushing their kids to achieve or be involved in a lot of things, or the kid, is just doing their thing and they're driven or they're not driven. We also have, the other part of, peer pressure, right? And so I know earlier this year you did a podcast with Officer Jeff Deek on vaping, And so when you look at some of, maybe not necessarily vaping in particular, but what are you guys seeing and doing as it relates to some of the things that, peer pressure is causing and kids needing to, or feeling like they need to fit in when in reality, maybe they don't?
Right. Yes. So we, as I mentioned, we're a local prevention council, and we're fortunate enough to work with the high school. And so what we do when we work with the high school, we actually have the high school students create campaigns. So again, it's that peer-to-peer education. So last year we had a grant, and the grant was focused on vaping. So we reached out to our high school, and the kids created anti-vaping or vaping statistics on pizza boxes. So we partnered up with 5 of our local pizzerias, and on those boxes was education from designed by our high school students to educate, families and their and their friends and whoever else in the community as well on, substance use. And I think what's really important is that ties into going back to your self-confidence too, and again, talking to kids, educating them and saying, okay, do you know that, one Juul pod is equal to 20 cigarettes? Not a lot of kids know that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's educating on, alcohol use. Your brain isn't fully developed until the age of 25. What's happening to your brain when you start using substances at a young age? And it's just bringing that information into the community, working with the community, working with our schools, working with our SROs, to deliver that to the kids so they can understand that, making healthy choices can be cool, right? And if you can do it, so can your friends. Sometimes with groups we role play. I'm in a situation and we go back and forth. Okay, you're at a party or your friend wants you to try vaping. How does this work? How does this pan out? Let's role play it, because then that gives them the tools. If they're in that situation, maybe they'll use, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, as I reflect on, kind of all age groups, from your, elementary school up through high school, our observations, both talking to, to employees of companies that have children, because we do want to know when we look at the, our wellness programming, one thing we want to do is get that family involved so that even if it's like, a simple walking challenge, we have our Chamber Wellness Challenge that's statewide starting in April for our third year. We'd love to have family members involved, because even going for a walk consciously is something that a lot of parents, it's like you get too caught up and don't realize, hey, you know what, take 20 minutes and go for a walk through the neighborhood and talk, versus, okay, we get home, we got to do dinner, we got to get to this, we got to get to that, right? Like chill out, right?
Well, I think, to be honest, what we've heard too, I think the pandemic gave us that pause, right? And we all kind of circled back and reassessed our values, and we had family dinner, or we had walks, or we took time to do these things. And something we had a program that at the beginning of the year to basically say, how do we preserve what we learned last year now that we're back out of the gate and we're all back to the way we used to be? And again, we say this often, live in the moment. Not easy, right? As you're saying, we get on to the next thing and we have to have dinner. But if we can make those small changes and live in the moment, then, we can do that and talk. And again, I will say it over and over, but educating kids at a young age. And what we offer oftentimes is programs for parents and children together. So they come to the program together, depending on what the program is, and it's age specific. If it's anything from puberty, learning about your body, to, to vaping, we'll say families with children ages 13 and up, 10 and up, come as a family. So you hear this together, and then you can talk about it, and you're both educated, and the entire family is on what this means. And, you can share that information.
Absolutely. Let's talk a little about roadblocks. And so, when you look at the programming that you deliver, programming that you probably want to deliver but can't, either to resources, time, what have you. Are there any obvious roadblocks that you guys talk about all the time that you really wish you could overcome in what you're trying to accomplish? Or
I have to say, I don't think so, because we're fortunate enough being an independent organization. So we really sit down, we vet our speakers, we look to the community for topics. And I think because we are our own organization, we can tackle those tough topics and we can bring them to the community. You don't have to come to them if you don't want, right?
Yeah.
If it doesn't interest you or you're concerned. But I think on a whole, I feel confident and comfortable that when we make a decision, we know we are bringing it to the community because we back it and we support it.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't really recall any roadblocks we've encountered, because like I said, we really go through a thorough process and vet, and we have, a lot of people with eyes on and, making the right choices. So we're pretty lucky that way.
That's awesome. I mean, again, I think when you look at calling out your, not calling out, but your programming, you've got community involvement, you've got parental involvement, and then you've got the youth involvement. So you're covering all bases. And I think that, one thing about the pandemic is I do believe it strengthened our communities. And regardless of kind of the polarization that we've had on some fronts, we really have come together, I believe, and now have a better appreciation and sensitivity for our neighbors. I mean, who would ever thought that you'd be sitting on your lawn with a virtual birthday party driving by, or graduation, or what have you? And I hope that does continue. So what's the future look like? I mean, what are you guys talking about? What are you seeing when we look at, moving forward with what we've been through, we're in the middle of, again, I think, what are the things that we need to do more? Is it just more openly talk about it, leverage resources, put the kids in control? What do we think?
Right. Well, I think a lot of it, but before I answer, I just want to touch on what you said in terms of sitting on lawns or having birthday parties outside and drive-bys. I think when I look at that, I think about my childhood, right? In our childhood, like I say, the good old days, it definitely brought back those good old days of play, kids riding their bikes, walking to their friends' houses, just unstructured playtime when, we were a little bit past the pandemic, that they could be outside with each other and being with their families and enjoying that family time, maybe going back to playing board games or whatever it might be, or just as you had mentioned, talking. So, and I think when I look going forward, it's the talking. It's people are talking about it. Get more people talking about it. Get the kids talking about it. Organizations, your community, your friends, anyone. The fact that we can have these conversations and continue to have them makes me feel we're in good shape and we continue to reach out. And what I tell parents oftentimes is that if you're struggling, chances are someone is struggling too. So right. Reach out. Get rid of, ask for help. I know it's hard. Being a mom, we all know it's hard. Being a dad, being a caregiver, whoever it may be, it's hard to ask for help. But when you ask for help, I can almost guarantee you someone is in need of the same thing or will be grateful that you reached out, and they may reach out to someone else, right? Almost like the domino effect and paying it forward. So I would just say talk, and something to listen. Sometimes these kids and these teens, they don't want you to solve their problems. They just want you to listen. They just need an ear, and sometimes it's as simple as saying, do you just need to vent or do you want me to help you solve that problem? Right? So talking and listening, two very...
Well, and I think listening, hands down, because, I was listening to a podcast, a Brene Brown podcast, and the individual that she had on, they were talking about, exactly this topic of mental health and listening. And the comment was, my mental health challenges or needs are unique to me. So don't think that you can be, the expert. And you meaning just generically, but folks that want to say, you need to do this, you need to do that. No, you need to listen and help guide the person because their situation is unique to them. And the last thing that you need is to, for someone telling you what you should do, because they don't know you, right, inside your brain, which is, I think why you reinforce listening and listening and listening.
Right. And I love what you just said there, because it's true. Everyone is unique. And, we're unique to ourselves and what we're feeling. And no one can tell you that your feelings are wrong, or no one can tell you to change your feelings. And I think where that listening comes in, and really being an active listener. And sometimes, like I said, just, don't talk, just listen. And it could be very hard, but trust me, I think you learn a lot more by listening.
Yeah. And also a little bit of humor too, right?
Oh, well, that's one thing I always say, laugh. If you can laugh, they say laughter obviously is the best medicine. And there have been studies about it releasing endorphins and what it does for your body. And I think we can all use a little bit of laughter. And sometimes it's as silly as a joke book, right? Getting a joke book, or your child, telling you a silly joke they heard. If it's something that you can find funny or humor in, I think that's a really great way to relieve stress and almost like diffuse the situation. If you're, in one, laughter can always help.
Sometimes, I definitely have a quirky side to me in that regard. And, I was in a deep conversation with a client. We were on, we had like 4 people on the call, and, some critical thinking, and there's, health insurance comes with big ticket, price tags. And they have a great solution that we've put together for them. And one of the owners of the firm said, why are they all of a sudden aggressive, this, insurance company, whereas last year they weren't? And so it was a deep conversation. And I said, well, it's because I sent them links to all your TikTok videos. And, and he's like, well, I know that's not true because I didn't, I've never done one. But the point was, it was that comic relief of sometimes it just is what it is. And we can't necessarily look into it and figure out all the reasons behind something. But yeah, I think that's important to have some fun with it. And kids want to laugh too. That's the biggest part that maybe they haven't had as much chance. So, go for a walk, have some laughs, and take it from there. So as we look to kind of wrap up, I think it's been great to get to know a little bit about what you and New Canaan Cares is doing. I know you've got a lot of programming coming up. I was looking at, on your calendar of events, you've got an event coming up in December of how to stay together with author Catherine Wintz. I'm not sure if I...
Yes. Wintz, how to slay together. Slay.
Yeah, how to slay together. And I knew that was...
Yeah. Well, and that is, as you looked at the description, it's really about the community working together, right? No one is perfect. We're all in this together.
Right.
Embrace it. We are who we are. Love yourself for your imperfections. Don't need to change them. And the same in our kids, right? Love our kids for who we are, their quirkiness, their imperfections, their silliness, whatever it might be, their flaws, their accomplishments, and just, really embrace it and be proud of who you are. And it's not easy in our society. I think no matter what age, I think the younger kids have it harder, especially social media, right?
Right.
And even as us adults getting older, we all have our things. And I always like to share that too. Even adults have their insecurities and their imperfections and their concerns. So when you look at us as a whole, no matter what age, we're kind of all on the same playing field.
Right. So as we close out, are people able to dial into your online events and take advantage of your resources?
Yes, absolutely. So as I mentioned, we have a resource page. And oftentimes we record our programs if you cannot attend them. Sometimes we don't record all of them per our speakers' requests, but we do try to record them as often as we can. This year we've been trying to hold many in-person programs because we really feel that beneficial in-person relationship and just seeing people and the dynamics and talking is really important, especially as we're, slowly coming back to in-person, but we recognize and understand people are still not comfortable with that, which is why sometimes programs will be offered via Zoom and in-person, or just in person with a recording. So people can always go to our website. They can join our mailing list. We have, they can always email caresinfo@newcanaancares.org with any questions. If they need help with anything, resources, if they have a group that they feel they want to get together and they want help organizing and for us to, facilitate that group, we're here to support the community and the community and beyond. We really want to look beyond our community as well. And we, incorporate neighboring towns. And the nice thing about Zoom is that our program last Thursday with Sunya Luther, I don't know if you, Dr. Sunya Luther, she was on CBS. She talks about the stress under pressure our kids are having. We reached different states because, we share our communications via Instagram and all of our partners. So we had people from different states tuning in. So that's the nice thing about Zoom. As much as I love the in-person, Zoom has given us the capability to bring in people from different speakers from different states and attendees from different places as well.
I agree. I think that, when we do look back at the embracing nature of Zoom meetings, virtual meetings, and now people realizing I can save some time and aggravation by having, a Zoom meeting when I don't need to get in the car and drive, that hopeful scalability gives us more time with our family. And I think that also, without a doubt, as we close out, you guys have a very robust website. And for the audience, can you just remind them what your website address is? And we'll put it up also.
Great. Thank you. Yes, it's www.newcanaancares.org.
Wonderful.
And if you type in just newcanaancares.org, you'll find us. And I can't thank you enough for having us, for bringing this conversation to the forefront. And we look forward to continuing the conversation.
Well, the old saying, it takes a village, right? And that's what you guys are doing. You're providing a platform with great expert resources to support children, their parents, and the community. And that's really where it happens, which gets back to, kind of when we started, it's, are we talking too much about it, which is extremely valuable. We're not talking too much about it, but then we need to crosswalk that to who can help me, what resources are available, and take it one day at a time, and laugh along the way and have some fun. So with that, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with us today on Straight Talk, and wish you well and have a happy and safe holiday season.
Great. Thank you so much for having me, and you too as well. Enjoy the holiday season. Be well. Keep talking, exactly like you said, one day at a time, laugh, and always reach out for help. People need to know that help is there.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.